Now, we just spent some time reviewing how to graph by hand using that plotting points technique. And it's great to also graph with a calculator too, or some sort of technology. And again, there's so many technologies out there. So if you have a different graphing calculator at home or a different program online that you use that you know how to work with, that's okay. That's fine. So I'm going to show you Desmos, and I'm going to show you how to use one of the apps for the TI-8384 calculator. And I'm going to go ahead and graph the same two examples we just did in the last video. So I'm just going to rewrite them here just so we can remember. So the first example we did was that y equals 4 minus x squared. And we kind of had this downward shape U there. And the second example we did was y equals the absolute value of x. And we had a more V shape in that case. So those are the two examples we went through. So let's just try maybe even just one of these and show you how the calculators can work. So I'm going to show you a calculator app first. So I have an iOS phone, and this is the app that I'm using. And I explained this in the last video. For iOS, it's called Graph in Calc. It's spelled kind of funny, 83. And it really mimics a TI-83 calculator. So if you have an actual TI-83 calculator, you should be able to follow along with this video. Again, there's some subtle differences, but they're very similar. The one thing I like about the app more than the actual TI-83 calculator is it's a touch screen and it's color. So it's really nice for those of us who are used to technology now. We use our phones all the time to have that touch screen. It's just so helpful to be able to zoom in on the graph much easier. So again, for my class, I'm really happy if you use the app. I don't mind. For other teachers, they may want the actual TI-8384 calculator, so just do what you need to do for class. So I'm going to focus on the first example here. You see that there. So to graph in the TI-8384 series, you do need to have your equation in a y equals form, which is a little restrictive. So for most of our examples, this is going to be fine. But sometimes if it's not in that y equals form, you may have to solve to get it in a y equals form. Again, which can be a little bit of a pain, but we can do it. So once you have that y equals form, like I do here, you're going to click that y equals button on your calculator. And I'll clear this out so you can see it. And you're just going to type in the right side. So I'm going to type in 4 minus, and then your x, you should see a little button that has an x on it on your calculator. And that is your variable. And you just type it in like that. Now I do have a square here. So my square key is right here. See how it says x squared? I just hit that square and it will attach that square in there for me. If you have a different exponent, let's say you have a cube or a fourth, you're going to notice a little up arrow key here. So instead, after you hit the x, what you could do is press the little up arrow. Oops. Sorry, guys, that's my phone going off. That's the problem with the app and recording, I guess. And you hit that little up arrow key here, and then you could put any exponent in you want. So you could still type the 2 in that way and just hit over, and that will clear out. So both options are good. Now, once you have that in, you're just going to hit the graph button, and you're going to see it graphed. Now, if you have the actual TI-8384, you're not going to see a little table at the bottom here. You'll just see the graph. But the touch screen is nice with the app because you could like just zoom in. I can zoom back out. And you can see my scale is adjusting as well. So this just gives me the shape. And sometimes it's really nice when you're doing the homework and you're answering questions. If you can just visualize that graph quickly, then these graphing utilities are really wonderful. It's so fast and you can see that visual. And sometimes that's really all you need to help you answer a question or kind of understand what's going on. So it's a great technique to have. Now you can also get a table. So I'm just going to hit done here for a second. And you'll see that there's another piece here called table. So if I hit table, then you'll notice that your calculator may be on Ask X, or if I hit that up top, it may say Auto X. In the actual TI-83, you'll be able to select, do you want Auto X or do you want to Ask X? Typically, we want it on Ask X, not Auto, which means that we can input the values that we want. So I could input -3 and hit enter here and get that -5 answer, or -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. So I can put in the values that I want, and then it will spit out the Y side so I can see those points. So again, that's really nice as well. It's just a good feature here with the calculator. Last thing on graphing with the TI-83, sometimes, or I want you to notice that the units are not the same on the axes. So yes, they're both going by 1, but the spacing is different. And that's something you have to be careful about when graphing. A lot of these graphing utilities are not square in their dimensions like we did it by hand. So on the calculator, if you want to square it, there's a zoom feature. Now on the actual TI-80 calculator, it's up here. So you'll see a zoom feature there. And if you hit zoom square, then that will square your screen for you. And that's really helpful, particularly when graphing circles. So circles sometimes look oval shaped on certain graphing utilities. So if you can square your screen, that will help. So that's just one example of how to graph on the TI-83 app. And again, the actual calculator works very similar. So if you have questions, just reach out to me. Now, I also want to show you how to graph with Desmos as well, because I love Desmos. It's really easy to use. It's free, so it's great. So let me stop sharing for a second. All right. So here is the Desmos website. I just typed in desmos.com, and what you're going to do is hit graphing calculator. Oops. And this is it right here. Now this is nice because their screen is actually square already. You can see everything is nicely equally spaced. And what we're going to just do is just type in our equation. And I'm just going to type in y equals 4 minus x. Now, what you can do is there's a little calculator button or little keyboard button down the bottom, and you could enter your square that way and just hit the square key. Or if you don't want to do that, you could always do that caret. Oops, let's see if I can do this. So the caret key is Shift 6 on your computer, and that works too. And then you could enter your exponent that way. Super easy. The nice thing with Desmos is you do not have to be in a y equals form to graph. So whatever your equation looks like, as long as it's in 2 variables, you can just type it in here and the graph pops up. It's really, really nice. And there's our graph there. And again, you can see some of the points are already labeled for you. Now, the other interesting thing is so let me actually show you what I just did here. So up top at Desmos, there's a little settings button here. So if you hit that settings button, it says edit list, you'll notice that now I have a table feature that pops up next to my equation. So if I click that button, convert to table, I'll create a table with my equation and I'll be able to pick my x values. So I could pick -3, I just hit enter, -2, -1, oops, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And we can get all those values in the table that we did by hand. So this is really nice as well. Again, Desmos tends to be my favorite. I actually prefer it over the TI-8384. So you'll see in class that I'll do both, but I tend to defer a lot more to Desmos just because it's so intuitive and it's free and it's just so easy to use. So just something to keep in mind. It's a really great tool. All right, so let's go back to our handout. I do want to talk about a couple more things here with technology. So when graphing using technology, we do often refer to the viewing rectangle or the viewing window. And the viewing window or rectangle refers to the scaling we are using on our axes when graphing, and really what we can see on the screen. So it's always of the form xmin, xmax, xscale by ymin, ymax, yscale. So the xmin refers to the minimum value visible on the x-axis. The xmax refers to the maximum visible value on the x-axis. And xscale refers to the scaling or spacing. And ymin, ymax, and yscale mean the same thing. So let me just bring up my TI-83 again. I think that'll be easier to see. All right. So here's that graph. And here is the first example that we just did. So if I look, I know it's a little bit hard for you guys to see at home, but my x-axis is right here. And I can see that the lowest value I go to is -6. And then the highest value it goes to is +6. So my x min is -6 and my x max is +6. Notice that my tick marks are going by ones, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my X scale is 1. So we would write that, again, for this particular example, as -6, 6, 1. So that's the X part. And then I look at my Y part. So my Y-axis, I actually go down to -8 and I go up to +8. So I go from -8 to +8, and my scaling happens to also be counting by ones. So that's what your viewing window is. What are you seeing? And we can change our viewing window, right? So if I want to zoom out, I can change my viewing window. Now I'm going on the Y-axis up to 15, right? And I'm not counting by ones anymore. Now I'm counting by what, 2.5. So I've changed my scaling, right? I could do it again. So now I'm going up to a little over 20, maybe it's like 22, and I'm counting by 5s. So we can change our viewing screen, and sometimes it's better to be more zoomed in. Sometimes we need to be further out depending on the data. Here's another just example. So -8, 8, 2. So here your X-axis runs from -8 to 8, but you're counting by 2s instead. So your tick marks are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on. And then the Y-axis is going from -5 to 5, and it's counting by ones. So this is called the viewing window. The standard viewing rectangle is -10 to 10 in both directions with a scaling by 1. And actually on that TI-83, there is a zoom feature that works there. So if you hit zoom standard, it actually will do that for you. It uses that standard viewing window within reason. So you are going from -10 to 10, although if you notice here, my scaling is by ones this way, but this way it's not by ones. So the scaling may be off, but you're still that -10 to 10 window there. One last note, I've already mentioned this, but just a reminder, when using certain graphing utilities, the display screen is often 5/8 as high as it is wide. So this can distort the graph, particularly when graphing circles. So you can, you'll see there that, the distances here are 1, here they're 2.5, but they're, not quite the same size, they're a little bit off. So it's not quite proportionate in a way. So you may want to square your graphs, and you can do that by hitting that zoom feature and square. And you can see it changes the look of it a little bit. You don't have to worry about in Desmos, which is really nice. So that's another reason why I like Desmos, is because you don't have that distortion issue. You really do get that square screen where the lengths are all equally spaced on both axes, which is nice. You can also zoom like we've talked about. You can find points along the curve. We already showed how to find tables as well. So you can do that here. On your TI-83 with the touchscreen, you can actually just tap along the curve and find points that way. If you have the actual calculator up top here, you'll have a trace button. So if you're in your graph and you hit the trace button, then you'll be able to use your keys here to trace along the curve that way.